Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I'd like to thank Bhaktin Manya for creating the slides from the notes that Brajaras Bhavana sent that I had given him. Thank you, Manya, for doing such a nice job. So we heard just this morning that from the verse, Tasmat Gurum Prapadyeta, Jignasu Shre Uttamam, Shabde Paritanishnatam, Brahman Upashamashrayam. We had a panel of devotees who had memorized quite a few verses, and they were being quizzed on them. And one of the verses is the one I just quoted from the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, starts with the word therefore, and it gives qualifications of a spiritual master, and one of them is Shabde Paritanishnatam. From Prabhupada's translation of that, he said, one who has taken a dip in the ocean of transcendental knowledge. So then one of the persons who was quizzing the panelists had asked, according to our acharyas, why is it important to have a spiritual master who knows Shastra? And one of the poignant answers is that it's the duty of a teacher to remove doubts. And we know even in Bhagavad Gita that Kṛṣṇa, when speaking to Arjuna, detected that he had doubts. And Prabhupada comments in his purport that doubts are like demons. And if one can meet somebody who can clear one's doubts, then one's path is clear. And therefore, it's important to be able to, when teaching others, be able to use logic and Shastra in order to remove doubts so that people can unabatedly open their hearts and serve Krishna. Now, why does this say, doubt your way to the perfect path? Because when Brajaras Bhavana Prabhu asked me to give a few short comments about doubts, he mentioned that everyone may have doubts when they start the process of Krishna consciousness, and they may have some ongoing doubts and lingering doubts. You name the adjective, and we can add it to the word doubts. And so he thought it would be a great topic to discuss. So I immediately thought, when he asked me to say a few things, about a profound statement that Kapila makes to his mother, Devahuti. And here it is at 3:26:30. Samshayota viparyaso nishchaya smritarevacha swapa ityuchate budher lakshanam ritata pratak. Doubt, misapprehension, correct apprehension, memory, and sleep, as determined by their different functions, are said to be the distinct characteristics of intelligence. So just take a moment to notice that one of the functions of the intelligence is to doubt. And that means that you have to compare one thing to another. And if you're not quite sure and you have a doubt, then there's a way in which you can sort it out. And in fact, one of my favorite verses from the Chaitanya Charitamrita is in the Adi Lila, and it's mentioned by Kaviraj Goswami, Siddhanta Bolya Chitanakara Alash, Iha Hoti Krishna Lagit Sudrid Manash. And what he says here is that one shouldn't be lazy in removing doubts. You should discuss topics even if they seem a little bit difficult to discuss, because when you're able to remove your doubts, which brings you to a siddhanta, which means a clear understanding of a topic, then you can proceed with dridhavrata and dridhamana. Your mind can be very fixed on the task at hand. Now I've excerpted from the Prabhupada's purport some of the key phrases, which, when I've completed them all, really makes up most of the purport. So this is one that we just discussed, but it's worth repeating because it's the main theme. Doubt is one of the important functions of the intelligence. So if someone doubts, it doesn't mean that you're unfaithful. It just means you're using your intelligence to come to a siddhanta so you can clearly understand something. but you should use your questioning power to ask an appropriate person or persons how to come to a clear understanding of a topic so you can remove your doubt. So, point is, it's not bad to doubt, it's natural. Doubt is one. Blind acceptance of something does not give evidence of intelligence, which makes sense since it's one of the functions of intelligence. And if you have no doubts, remember when Lord Chaitanya was sitting listening to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya for 7 days, and Sarvabhauma said, "Don't you have any doubts about what I'm saying?" Because it's natural that a student would ask questions. If you're taking music lessons, you're like, "How do I do this? How's that?" You have to ask questions. So just blind acceptance doesn't show evidence of intelligence. And by the way, with Lord Chaitanya, actually, he understood perfectly what the Vedanta Sutra meant, but he told Sarvabhauma, whatever you're saying is blocking the meaning, just like clouds block the sun. So to cultivate intelligence, one should be doubtful in the beginning. Is that helpful? A relief? Maybe so. And means, with a long pause, means please change the slide. By intelligence only, one can understand things as they are. And I like the use of that magnifying glass. So oftentimes, if we look carefully into something, look at more closely, we can come to a siddhanta. Prabhupada continues, by intelligence only can one understand whether or not he is the body. That's interesting also, because in the verse, in the second canto, second chapter, 35th verse, Shukadeva Goswami says that you can use your intelligence to come to a conclusion that you're not your body, and Prabhupada demonstrates how to do that in his purport. So intelligence is meant for that. Am I my body? Am I not my body? The intelligence empowered by Krishna is so helpful that you can actually come to see that you're not your body just by using your intelligence. Prabhupada, the study to determine whether one's identity is spiritual or material begins in doubt, which means you have to ask some kind of questions like, am I or am I not? And then receive the answers. Doubting is not favorable after one determines an authorized source of knowledge. And this is the last slide. So the point is, using the intelligence to overcome doubts, to answer pressing questions is important. And in the sense of doubting, meaning that one doubts the process itself, once one is able to determine an authorized source of knowledge, doubting does not become helpful. In other words, doubting helps us triangulate till we come to a source that we can trust. So if you don't have a source that you can trust, and you don't have axiomatic truth, meaning it's truth that's self-luminous and that you don't question because you trust the source, then you can't make progress not only in Krishna consciousness, but any science. If you go into any of your classes in high school or university, or whatever grade you may be in, and the teacher brings out a textbook and says, today we're going to study history, they say, oh, I don't believe anything in this book. You'll probably be not very productive in the class, or in chemistry, or in geometry. Solve for, here, solve for this. There's nothing, no X to solve for. So you have to have axiomatic knowledge that comes from a trusted source. Otherwise, you get what's called infinite regress. If you don't trust anything or anyone and it keeps going back and back and back, you'll never come to any conclusion whatsoever. And then your life becomes a series of absurdities. So this is the one exception that once you can determine that the source is valid, like you find a good doctor and you've verified the doctor has been vetted, has gone to the proper schools, and so forth, then you can't doubt the prescription. You just take it. So that's a preamble to a discussion, and that Roger Raspavin will tell you more about.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj. Now we're just going to be assigning you to some breakout rooms, and you'll have a breakout room leader that will facilitate the discussion. We will take 10 minutes, and then we'll be back here at 4:20 to share what we've learned from those rooms. And so please feel free to join, and one of us will be in the main room as well in case you end up dropping off. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome from your breakout rooms. We hope you had a good discussion. And before we move on to like the general reflections, why don't we hear 3 things, or we'll take 3 total reflections of what you like that maybe someone shared in your group. So please raise your hand if you have something. Marge, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just heard something really interesting. The question that Wait, as the room leader, asked was, which is worse, blind faith or blind doubt? And Bhakta Arav said, better to have blind faith than to have blind doubt, because if he said most people have blind doubt and they just out of hand reject Bhagavad Gita, but let's say you have blind faith and you accept it, and at least you got the Bhagavad Gita. It reminded me of Pascal's wager that if you have faith in God, then what do you have to lose? Because if you're wrong, then you're like everybody else. But if other people are wrong and they doubt God, then they'll lose their opportunity. So that was profound. But overall, the experience was really nice to have the room. Om Tat Sat.
Thank you so much, Marge, for sharing that. And that was a great point, Bhakta Arav. And we'll take 2 more before we move on to general reflections. Manya?
Hey, Krishna. Firstly, I just want to say we had a little icebreaker in our group asking what our favorite vegetable was, and all of us said potato. So we love potatoes in our group. But we also had the question of which is better, blind faith and blind doubt. And I gained a lot from this because I thought, blind faith is worse because faith is like where you put your heart into, and why would you put your heart into something that you don't even trust? And then Chaitanya Nityanam was saying in our group that kind of similar to what you were saying, are that blind doubt is continuously asking like, why this, why that? And if you keep going on in your life asking why this, why that, it's just kind of like you're nowhere, like you're not on one side nor on either, you're just kind of constantly questioning in the wrong way. So I thought that was nice. Yeah.
That's really nice. Thank you, Manya. And lastly, Bredras. Bhavana.
First, I would say our group was very diverse. Amoda Vardhana mentioned this, where we had people from like I think 4 different cities, and like we had an 8-year-old and also like a 22-year-old. So it was a very interesting kind of discussion that we were having. And again, with this in my group, actually, a lot of us were leaning towards blind faith because it felt like it was kind of immature to have blind faith because you're not able to really choose the right things. And so that was a very interesting thing. I think Mukunda mentioned that if he's here. Yeah, Mukunda and Vrinda over there. Yeah, so they mentioned how blind faith kind of is almost like a form of like no intelligence because you're not doubting and questioning to begin with.
That's a great point. Thank you, Bredras, Bhavana, and Mukunda for sharing that. And now we would go on, but we just have 5 minutes left. So, Amarj, if you'd like to lead in closing overall reflections or whatever you'd like.